Hey guys, so I said I was going to do some videos on how to grow mushrooms at home and sort of some general fungi videos I was thinking I would do too, microbiology type stuff. So this video is the first one of that. Forgive any kinks and just bear with me. I'm just going to go over sort of a general overview of how the whole process works, using an example that I have to grow in the lab. I actually have to transfer some cultures right now, so I'm going to use that as an example. It's in a petri dish, so hopefully the information transfers in your head. And then I'm going to show you how to make a still air box, which is a setup that you can make at home to grow your own mushrooms in a semi-sterile environment and really up your grow game at home and do it on the cheap. Okay guys, so right now we're going to go over sort of the general process of cultivating fungi. It's sort of like a microbiology basics too. It's like basically it's a similar process that you might use with bacteria, although there's more involved in that. But this is a culture of filamentous fungi. It's called Micromucorrhamenius. I might be mispronouncing that, but we use this in our research. I use this, actually I don't use this one in my research, but anyway, so we're going to be transferring this onto a new dish of media, and the process is essentially the same as sort of cultivating mushrooms at home. You have some sort of sterile substrate that you are growing your fungus on, and you have some initial culture or spores that you are using to inoculate that. And then you have a clean, sterile environment where you're actually doing the process, and you're doing the whole process using something called sterile technique. And sterile technique is sort of just a way of operating that is conscientious of all the different forms of contamination. So you might know that I'm not wearing gloves. That's because I wash my hands and I've used hand sanitizer. I've even wiped off this bracelet that I'm wearing, and I've already wiped down this counter. And I'm working in front of a flow hood today. That is a sterile flow of air that removes any contamination using a high efficiency particulate air filter, I believe that is. I don't know, could be wrong, but whatever. Anyway, it basically filters out the air and any contaminants in it up to 0.3 microns. So it's a really useful tool to have, but it's also incredibly expensive. So after I go through this whole process, I'm going to actually show you how to make a sterile, not a semi-sterile, still air box, which sort of the same idea as a flow hood. You're creating an environment that is like highly reduced in terms of contaminants, but instead of doing it with a sterile flow of air, what they're doing is instead minimizing airflow within the environment and then pre-cleaning the environment. So I'll show you how to do that. So before we get started, just I'm gonna turn on my my burner here. But the reason we're using a Bunsen burner, or this flame for you, is to sterilize our tools. So let's say I'm using a scalpel, right? This is what I'm going to cut the little piece of fungi that I'm working with, or fungus that I'm working with, out of. If you're working with this, you can sterilize it with alcohol. Well, not sterilize it, but you can clean it with alcohol, and you can then flame sterilize it in the fire. So it gets red hot, and that whatever was on there is not on there anymore. We also have a jar of alcohol that we're going to put our tools in. We have sterile substrate, which would be substrate for you, but these are petri dishes for me. We have a bottle of alcohol, 70% alcohol. That's in high demand right now. And we also have some gloves. So that's sort of that, and the clean environment is sort of the main things that we need. The rest of this portion of the video is going to have the flow hood on, so it's going to be kind of a noisy thing. So hopefully you don't mind. Gloves on. All right, I'm going to turn on the flow hood here. Okay, so you're going to start hearing it turn on here. So hopefully it's not too loud, but I'm gonna start talking a little bit louder just in case. Next what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna clean my hands. So your hands are a constant source of contamination, and on top of that they can also introduce like skin flakes, pieces of hair, stuff like that. So you just want to keep your hands clean. If you have gloves, use them. Next we're going to clean the work surface. So if this was a box that you were doing your transfers in, like a still air box, which I'll show you, which is, like I said, it's a box that you've cut some holes in to reduce airflow and then to put your hands into. It's literally just a box. So if you were doing that work in the still air box, you would not only be cleaning the horizontal surface, but you would be cleaning the walls too. And anything that you were bringing into it, you would have to pre-clean and then leave it in there, ideally. All right. That must be great audio. That must sound awesome. Okay. So we have a new culture here. Some substrate. So this for you, instead of an agar dish that has nutrient supplements and a specific recipe, you would be having something like sterilized or pasteurized hay, vermiculite, coffee grounds, stuff like that. But this for us is agar, and that's how I transfer from this dish to this dish. Okay, so next we're going to actually begin the transfer process by cleaning and flame sterilizing our scalpel. Put this in alcohol, and now it's ready to be flame sterilized. So we'll do this over here. For you, this would be, say, like not a butter knife. You don't want to do that, but like let's say like just a regular stainless steel knife. So you're dipped it in alcohol, you have your candle or your alcohol wick or whatever, and you place it in the flame. You kind of see it, it's on fire there. You want to get a little bit of all of that, get it all burned up. And then you're going to bring it near the tip here of the flame and wait for it to start to glow red hot. You kind of see that glowing red hot there. I like to really let it get red hot because, you know, some of these cultures are kind of tough to cut through, so I want to give myself a little bit of leeway room in terms of sterility. So what we're going to do next is we're going to cut into this auger and remove a block from this auger and put it into that auger. Because this has spores, it's like a mold, I actually have to turn off the flow hood for a moment to reduce the risk of introducing spores into my body, which is part of the job. So this is going to go fast. That's it. That's not the greatest transfer I've ever made. It's certainly had a little bit of finagling to do with the auger block. You can chalk that up to the fact that I'm kind of in an awkward position to film this video. What I just did is I inoculated the new substrate. This is what you would do every time you decide to grow a culture at home. So, and that doesn't have to be limited to just mushrooms. It can be like your yeast, it could be bread yeast, it could be a culture of kombucha, a symbiotic culture of kombucha. It could be all kinds of stuff that you decide to grow at home, stuff that you take from the water, you know, if you're trying to see stuff growing in the water, you know, what's naturally present, stuff like that. All this kind of thing is sort of, all these things grow on substrates, and inoculating them is a process you have to do for a lot of different things. So that's sort of the general process. You have a sterilized substrate, you have a sterilized environment, you have a original culture or spores or whatever, and you're using sterilized equipment or cleaned equipment to take a small piece of it and put it into a new, fresh batch of substrate for it to grow out on. There's so much more to it when you grow mushrooms, because you're also trying to cater to the fungus to encourage it to grow mushrooms. So there's a lot more than just that. but the basic idea of transferring one culture to a new substrate is the same. So yeah, I'm going to label these things, and then we're going to be done with this, and I'll show you how to make a still air box.